I think I said it before, but Star Fox, the greatest achievement for Star Fox Zero is making me not only play but like the cockpit view. I've always hated it. In Star Fox 64, I'm like, I hate this. Yeah, I can't see, and I don't want to be immersed. I want to like play the game. But Star Fox 64, 64 3D Volume 1, 8? Why is this in, oh, they're in chronological order. It's weird. Because they're all on the same day. I want to work in time. Oh, cool. Apparently, the Auto's topic scripts that we ran found the two Iwata asks on Star Fox 64 that talk about controls and flagged them both as dark blue appropriately. That makes me feel good. I was like, which one of these talks about controls? I scroll down, hey, dark blue. And he's talking about speed. How do you speed up and slow down? And it feels great to play with gyro sensors. You're like, oh, Brandon. So I'll tweet this out. See what happens. I guess I'll put the picture in. I need to find out that it's not a flattering picture. I'm gonna click on this one and see what we got going here. Oh, Dylan Cuthbert, interesting. I wonder if they talk about Star Fox Command in here. Ooh.
Iwata as a player, Aminozen, what did you think of Star Fox 64 Mono? What made an impression on me with regard to the voices was how much Slippy talks. For example, Takano. Fox. Do something. Miyamoto. Ribbit. Takano. Hideoesn. Tisei. Ribbit. Laughs. At first, though, he did say things like, do something, Ribbit. But Miyamoto's said WASN? T cool, so I took it out. Miyamoto oh, that's right. Laughs, everyone, laughs. Amano all the talking made an impression on me. When I first played it, I thought it was difficult. Iwata, did you also think Star Fox 64 was difficult? Miyamoto, Star Fox has always been all about acceleration and deceleration. It's poor playing if you just recklessly plunge ahead even when a wall is coming up or you enter a meteor storm, because you LL just crash into things. Iwata, just trying to dodge one? T-work. Miyamoto no. When a wall or meteor storm comes, it's fun to do this. Leaning back, slam on the brakes, and then hit the booster when you can confidently shoot through, but I suppose Amano's didn't? To know that back in this first year of secondary school, laughs, Amano nope everyone, laughs, Iwata Amanosen, you hounded Imamurazen to make a new Star Fox game, so what made you think it was difficult? Amano well, once I got used to it, it was fun. At first glance, Star Fox looks like a shooting game, so I thought the objective was to shoot enemies, but after I played it a few times, I noticed how fun it was to slip through narrow places.
That's interesting. Movement is such a big deal in Star Fox, but we'll see that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Doot, doot, doot.
Iwata after all, going through Tari was what led to the idea of Fox, laughs, Amano yes, laughs, and like Miyamoto-san just said, I learned that it's all about how you accelerate and decelerate, so once I had learned complete control of the R-Wing, it was loads of fun. Iwata, even in your first year of secondary school, you had grasped the key to enjoying it. Laughs, Amano yes, laughs, Miyamoto my apologies, laughs, everyone, laughs, Iwata, in your secondary school days, you overcame the difficulty and noticed how fun Star Fox was, so you wanted to see what it would be like on the new equipment and let Imamurazen know it. Amano yes. Also, shooting games are for your experienced gamer, aren't they? Iwata yes, shooting games used to be really mainstream, but they gradually gained that reputation. Amano the first time I played Star Fox 64, I felt like there was a whole world on the other side of the television screen. I thought it would be a shame if it went no further than hardcore gamers. I wanted more people to enjoy it, so I told Imamurazen to make a new one. Iwata I see. Amano, something I understand now that I am involved with game development is that when you simply say a game is difficult, you may mean that the game itself is difficult or you may mean that it is difficult getting used to the controls. Iwata yes, that's right.
This is kind of something interesting. One thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people will accept a game being difficult if the levels are hard or there's hard bosses or even if it's cheap. But when the controls are one of the first things that players have to learn and they may not be used to, they consider that kind of difficulty to be on a whole different level. Like they think it's not unacceptable to have challenging or different, unique, unintuitive, whatever controls. And I'm going to quote this. That's a good one.
Iwata yes, that's right. Amano the controls for Star Fox 64 3D are intuitive, so I think that the difficulty of growing accustomed to the controls is less present. Iwata nice transition, Amanozen, laughs, alright. Let's talk about Star Fox 64 3D for the Nintendo 3DS system. Later, I will ask about the intuitive controls that Amanozen just mentioned, but first, Miyamoto-san, when did you first decide to make a Star Fox game for the Nintendo 3DS system? Miyamoto, pretty early on. Iwata, soon after we had decided the direction to take with the Nintendo 3DS system. Miyamoto yes, one theme of the Nintendo 3DS system was gameplay involving depth. For example, the lasers that the R-Wing fires are really long and massive. Iwata, it fires something like long rods. Miyamoto otherwise, it WOULDN? T hit what you were aiming at. But on the Nintendo 3DS system, you can clearly see the depth involved, so I thought it would be more fun shooting with a laser. And as mentioned earlier, when we made Star Fox 64, we wanted to show how cool aircraft are, so Iwata, you wanted people to see how cool they are in 3D.
This is a really important point that we will also potentially come back to later, but this idea of what makes Star Fox unique both in its controls, one of them being how you pilot the R-Wing, the second one being how you, like, what defines the spaces that you're flying through. So if you're just flying through an empty space, it doesn't really matter how you fly, but when you put obstacles and enemies, your control really starts to matter. And Miyamoto is somebody who really understands depth. I mean, 3D stereoscopic depth and how the 3DS really can enhance something like that. So I find it interesting that it has specific comments on why they made Star Fox 64 3DS, which I don't own, but I might try to get my hands on. And Miyamoto says it's more fun to shoot at things when you can sort of perceive the space and aim in your mind before the bullets actually hit.
Iwata, you wanted people see how cool they are in 3D Miyamoto that? That's right. I thought it would be great to see scenes in 3D like the fighters flying in formation and a pilot in a cockpit signaling with his hand just before suddenly taking a nosedive, or a swarm of enemies pouring out of a giant UFO in the air over a pyramid. Dylan, the game has a lot of cinematic elements. Miyamoto, so I wanted to make the game for the Nintendo 3DS system, but making a completely new Star Fox game like Aminozen wanted would take 3 years to complete. While they wanted something for the Nintendo 3DS system fast. Luckily, Dylan's work was at a pause, so I called him right away. Iwata, after you got that call from Miyamoto, what was on your mind as you began? Dylan, the idea was to faithfully recreate the contents of Star Fox 64. I did want to concentrate on improving the graphics, so I made thorough use of normal mapping. Normal mapping is also called back 3-bump mapping. It's a technology for adding shading to planes so they appear to have irregularities. The technology was not available in the days of the Nintendo 64 system. Dylan, correct. If you use normal mapping, it looks much more impressive on the Nintendo 3DS system. Because of its stereoscopic 3D? Then, on any other system, something I noticed as we made it was how there's something like depth in a sideways direction, as well with the Nintendo 3DS system. Iwata, you can sense it horizontally and not just vertically. Dylan, yes, there's something you sense subconsciously when you pass by objects sideways, so I decided to add a lot of detail to the graphics. Amano, and that increased concentration of detail generates a stronger 3D effect. For example, it's much easier to go through rings floating in the air. Iwata, because it's easier to grasp exactly where they are when the graphics say. Amano, yes, there's a place where 3 items are lined up vertically and you get them by doing a sort of somersault. You can do that fairly easily in 3D, but it's difficult in 2D. Laughs, Iwata that's interesting.
Try a somersault!
Here comes a big one!
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm still a huge fan of the 3DS and stereoscopic 3D. And I mean, it's obviously, it sounds like these designers know what they're talking about. But like, I don't think a lot of people recognize when they're playing games exactly what the games are asking them to do and how the technology either helps or hinders. And just working in 3D is just really complicated for all games. It's just really complicated, both in terms of controls and visual feedback, and then just interacting in a dynamic 3D environment. It gets you have a lot of issues that pop up. So I really like how these designers are pinpointing very specific issues like bad 3D, you know, bad 3D, and depth perception, where you can't really see things too well without the stereoscopic 3D. Sure, you can use you know, shadows, and you can use size constancy, you can use gradient and parallax and all these other ways to try to determine 3D distances using on a 2D visual vantage point, but it's nothing like just being able to see it and just know, like just to be able to see it with your eyes and perceive the depth directly. So like, it's something they're talking about here, and I never really, this idea that they're pointing out adding normal mapped graphics to Star Fox has a different effect when you can see it in stereoscopic 3D as you're flying horizontally past things and not just running straight towards it. And they say when you fly past objects you can really see it, so that sounds interesting. I never even thought of that, but it sounds like something I want to experience. I'm gonna grab this as a quote. You can use that and make some more, because I like this. Yeah, water asks tend to be really concentrated, which is good. It gives us a lot to think about. And I'm going to switch over to the next one here. This is something I'm really curious about, how they talk about the motion controls on the 3DS version.
Iwata, apart from the graphics, what else about Star Fox 64 did you change? Amano, the biggest change is that there are now two modes. One is the Nintendo 64 mode, which allows fans to play the game just as it was on Star Fox 64, but it does have improved graphics and allow players to experience 3D Iwata. In other words, you use the cut-and-cheats technology of the Nintendo 3DS system to recreate Star Fox 64 from 14 years ago as an even more high-density game. Amano, yes, that's right. And as mentioned earlier, some people may find Star Fox 64 to be difficult. Since the game is for a handheld this time, I wanted to make it easier to play, so we created the Nintendo 3DS mode. You lowered the difficulty. Amano, first, we prepared something that was simply easier, but then something happened? Dylanson, that was about 1 month before completion. WASN? It. Dylan, yes, I think so. Amano, just when I thought it was about done, Miyamotozan said. Aran? You going to use the gyro sensor? Iwata, oh, that again. Laughs. Amano, oh yes, laughs. Iwata, that old trick? He upended the T-table. Laughs. Editor? S-note, Miyamotozan sometimes makes drastic last-minute changes at the final stage of game development, which is compared to an upending of a T-table. The changes are so drastic it throws out everything that the development staff has worked on until that point, and they must scramble to place and reorganize the contents back on the table. To meet his request, Amano, yes, but he had mentioned it when we began making it. That's true. Miyamoto Iwata laughs. Amano, but we were making our first game for the Nintendo 3DS system, so our hands were full simply recreating Star Fox 64 and improving the graphics. Then, when the end was in sight, Miyamotozan hadn't said anything else about it, so we thought, is it really alright not to use it? Dylan, that's right. In the latter half of development, we began to worry about that though. Laughs. Amano, yes. Laughs. Then about 1 month before the game was done, Miyamotozan pointed it out. He said that you could play Star Fox 64 on the Wii console? Virtual Console 19. And since we were bringing it out specifically for the Nintendo 3DS system, it needed new Appeal 19. Virtual Console, a service that allows players to use their Wii consoles or Nintendo 3DS systems to enjoy recreations. Iwata, and that was the gyro sensor. Amano, right. So I quickly summoned two programmers and Dylanson from QGAMES to Aruma and over the course of 2 days we focused on adapting the game. Dylan, yes. But I am glad we did that. Amano, it shaped up nicely for the gyro sensor. Iwata, you made that much progress in just 2 days. Amano, yes. Iwata, you sure? Nintendo 64 controller? Analog stick is like a pilot? So if you push it up, the R-wing should go down. Iwata, but not everyone finds that so natural. Miyamoto, no. Some people think it only makes sense that if you push it up, the R-wing goes up. The world is divided into these two camps. Iwata, UCOULDN? To unite the whole world. Miyamoto, exactly. It's a thorny issue. Amano, yes. Iwata, what did you think about that at first? Aminozan. Amano, when I started making it, I talked it over thoroughly with Miyamotozan. There are some basic dilemmas involved in controls for a 3D shooting game. On the Nintendo 64 system, for example, if you pushed the analog stick up, the R-wing descended. But some people feel that if you pushed the stick up, the R-wing should ascend. Iwata, that's right. That's something Miyamotozan has wrestled with for years. Miyamoto, yes. When I play Star Fox 64, I feel like the Nintendo 64 controller. Analog stick is like a pilot. So if you push it up, the R-wing should go down. Iwata, but not everyone finds that so natural. Miyamoto, no. Some people think it only makes sense that if you push it up, the R-wing goes up. The world is divided into these two camps. Iwata, UCOULDN? To unite the whole world. Miyamoto, exactly. It's a thorny issue. I wanted to bring out that feeling of piloting, but it didn't feel right to me that the plane descends. Amano, but on the Nintendo 3DS system, you can use the circle pad, Dylan, which was also a problem. Amano, even some of the people who knew that pushing the stick up on the Nintendo 64 system caused the R-wing to descend would think that now that you have the circle pad with Nintendo 3DS, moving it up will cause the R-wing to rise. Wada. It became even more complicated. Amano, right. People think about it in different ways, so we realized it was a confusing area. Iwata, I wonder why such individual differences arise. Dylan, I think it depends upon where on the screen you are looking. Whether you are looking at the cursor or the aircraft. Iwata, oh, I see. People who watch the cursor want the R-wing to rise when they push the circle pad up, and people who are watching the R-wing think it will descend. Miyamoto, yes, I always watch the aircraft. Iwata, now that I hear that, it makes perfect sense. We finally solved this long-standing mystery. Laughs. Amano. But everyone is different that way, so we decided to make it so players can change the settings, choosing whichever method of operation they like best. Miyamoto, which brings us to the gyro sensor. If you tilt the Nintendo 3DS system up, the R-wing goes up, and if you tip it down, R-wing goes down. It's universal. Iwata, so everyone can instinctively operate the game in the same way whether they are looking at the cursor or their aircraft. Dylan, it feels absolutely great to play. Takano, yes, it really does. Iwata, why do you think it feels so good? Because it moves directly in line with your intuition. Takano, like in Super Mario Bros. There are times when you reconcentrating on the game and you jerk the controller in the direction you want to jump. Iwata, yes, Takano, well. The Nintendo 3DS system actually responds to your movement. Iwata, that is part of the game? As control system. Takano, right, I think that's why it feels so good. Miyamoto, especially when you slip through a low arch.
Some interesting insights about controller feel and game feel. They likened people moving the controller when they play to sort of a good game feel of how the game responds to your instinctual reactions. And when you're holding a 3DS, how you move is how the game plays. It kind of reminds me of playing Resident Evil Revelations on the 3DS. I really like the motion controls, and I like trying to hold the aim steady when hitting zombies. So like when my hands were shaking because I was on a train or whatever, it just made the whole experience harder and made it a little scarier. So that's interesting. I'm gonna add all these quotes, and then we'll take a look at some other interesting things we are looking at in terms of controls. So whenever I add quoted lines into the design-oriented, they're really easy to search because they are part of the keyword search. So at any time with this, you can type in any word into the Omni search box, the one at the top, or just a keyword, and you'll find the appropriate content without having to know which I want to ask it came from or who said it. It just makes it really easy for finding quotes most of the time. Cool. So now we got what other shoot 'em ups might there be? Let's see if they have anything on not Zelda, but I want to type in the word Zelda here in the game, and I'm going to type in the word control. Let's see if any of these. Let's look at the timeline real quick. Nothing in particular that has control stands out except for this. Let's take a look at this. Stare facts. Do they talk about controls here? Let's take a look. I feel confident that applying the Wii's unique control system controls without having to change the game's content. You mean you want to control Link by using the remote pointer in certain directions? You want to use control Link by pointing Link in certain directions? That's what they did in the DS versions. Didn't really work in Twilight Princess, apparently. Controls and cameras, controls, how smooth the controls in Mario Galaxy. That's funny. E3, we want to use a controller like a sword. Or Wii remote like a fishing rod, even though it's controlled by the buttons. They talk a lot about controls here. Yeah, I mean that's why it's flagged blue for mechanics. It's no joke. They're talking about it all over the place. Interesting. I want to see if they talk about Ocarina of Time 3DS. So I'm going to type in event search, Zelda. I'm going to type in, let's see, Ocarina of Time. So here are all the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Times. Check out the timeline. Nothing that says controls particularly, but we can always go to the advanced search and type in control, see what we get. Oh, so the project began as remaking The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, but in the end we put in many elements tailored specifically for the 3DS. The first one comes to mind is the ability to control Link is looking using the gyro sensors built into the system. Oh, this is so good. I forgot about this. Yeah, like that. It's just like this free look system, so you're like, I'm in a space. Let me move it around. I call that the periscope style motion controls. Yeah, and then it just couples in with your first person aiming. I love the first person aiming like that. That's so good. I didn't want to move the camera along the analog controls. Control. This should have been flagged. This definitely needs to be 5136. Talking about controls all over the place. Why didn't it get flagged? I play Star Fox Zero with gamepad. I don't even own a pro controller, so that answers your question. So yeah, this I Want to Ask is talking a lot about the motion controls. I didn't want to move the camera with the analog controls. This is something to do with changing the line of sight by pointing left. Twilight Princess. When you can push the analog stick, we make it work both ways, so you can move the camera up or down, so that the two answer. I wonder what he say. Let's you can make it work both ways, so the camera moves up or down. Oh, they're talking about allowing inverted controls, but with the gyro sensor, nobody has inverted controls because it's direct one-to-one. We just read this in the Star Fox thing. Interesting. I'll pop this in the quotes, why not? There are times when the gyro sensor alone is enough, so we also made it to where you can use the analog control. Then Moria-san made it to where you can switch back and forth between gyro and the analog seamlessly. You can choose on or off. At first, you could only use the gyro sensor to control the line of sight in the first-person mode when using items and moving the camera for Link point of view. But in the end, 2 weeks before making the final ROM, right at the last minute, Miyamoto said, "Can't you use the gyro sensor to change the line of sight at normal times when you're just moving Link around? That affects every single scene." That's just something you say before the end. Wow. When we tried doing what we could, and turned out that when Link is moving around using L targeting to lock on the camera follows him around, so you can move the gyro sensor to look around. That's really cool too. So check this out. Yokoma, you should be really interested about this too. This is talking about 3D controls in Zelda style games. Gyro sensor wide open so you can look around. When we trimmed that away, it didn't work. We had to reach a conclusion in a mere 3 days. Wow, I don't know why they keep doing this, but geez. And last minute changes. But yeah, like when you lock on, you can free move the camera around for this sort of cinematic handy cam effect. And it's kind of like in Wind Waker, where you can use the right stick when locked on to move the camera behind your enemies, which is really cool. I know it's you. Yeah, tell those other people who you are. I bet Anima want to do this. Oh, sorry, this something's true. To allow players to move the camera using the gyro sensor while Link was moving, but I thought it was impossible since we were so close. But Miyamoto said, "Section, couldn't you say yourself?" So you asked. So now they have this feature, the last minute feature. I love that. Oh, who doesn't want to keep playing that? So now we can type in what's in the title? Sin and punishment. Sin and punishment. Timeline. Not a lot. Oh, it's right here. Increased difficulty, 60 frames per second, and the controller provides inspiration. This is what I want to take a look at. Control. Yeah, I'm gonna flag this. Hold on. 4753. This is an article about mechanics and controls. I don't know why our system didn't pick that up, but that's alright. I'm gonna go ahead and play this one from the top. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. We can branch off from this topic. We're almost at the end of all this stuff talking about controls, because apparently not a lot of people write about shoot 'em ups and not a lot of people write about control systems in games. So this is what we get.
Iwata, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules today. Magawa, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having us. Iwata, the previous incarnation of Sin and Punishment 1, for the Nintendo 64, is a bit of a cult classic. We asked you to come all the way here to Kyoto because I'd like to ask your help in conveying, to as many people as possible, what kind of people make Sin and Punishment and what is so great about it. I am counting on you on Sin and Punishment, a shooting game developed for the Nintendo 64 and released only in Japan in November 2000. Since September 2007 the game is also available in Europe on the Virtual Console for 1200 Wii points. Magawa, we happy to help. Iwata, first, I'd like our guests from Treasure to introduce themselves to Treasure Company, Limited, a video game developer founded in 1992 with particular expertise in action and shooting games. Among the many games it has been involved in developing are Mischief Makers, Ikaruga and Wario World. Magawa, I am Magawa, president of Treasure. I serve as producer on Sin and Punishment. Successor of the Skies Nakagawa, I am Nakagawa from Treasure. Games called For the Right Position, 3 left and right positions. For right position, players would hold the right grip with their right hand, and use the thumb of their left hand to operate the analogs. I was an employee of Treasure when the first game came out, but now I am a freelancer. I lent assistance this time as art director. Iwata, you all worked on the previous game, right? Magawa, yes. Iwata, I would like to hear how the first game began and how you made it. Magawa, alright. It all began with the Nintendo 64 controller. At the time Nintendo had suggested 2 ways of holding it, left position and right position 3, but most games called for the right position, 3 left and right positions. For right position, players would hold the right grip with their right hand, and use the thumb of their left hand to operate the analog stick. For left position, players held the left grip in their left hand and used the thumb of their right hand to operate the analog stick. Iwata, Mario 644 used the right position, so everyone used that. For Super Mario 64, the first Mario 3D action game, released simultaneously with the Nintendo 64 in Europe in March 1997. Magawa, we started talking about how anyone hardly ever used the left position, even though you can perform independent actions with it. Iwata, you can do some unique controls, but no one used it. Magawa, right, no one used it, but we thought it would make for an interesting way to play the game and started development. Iwata, so Sin and Punishment began with you deciding to make full use of the left position. Magawa, yes, we thought maybe you could aim with the analog stick and move with the plus control pad, in the left position. Iwata, how did that work out as you began development? Magawa, we realized that the independent operations in the left position would be unexpectedly hard for players the first time they tried it. Iwata, because they never done it before. Magawa and Nintendo told us that. What? More, a controller pack 5 could be plugged into the Nintendo 64 controller, and there was talk of adding a sensor to it, but we had already begun development for the left position. Adapting it to a sensor at that point would have only lengthened a development process that was already dragging on. We abandoned it, but after some time had passed, the Wii arrived. 5 controller pack. An accessory for the Nintendo 64 controller. It could be inserted into the bottom and used to save game data, etc. Iwata, that's quite a long time. Laughs. Magawa, it sure is. Laughs. When I saw the Wii remote, I thought, so this is the sensor they were talking about? Iwata, I see. Magawa, so I said, come on, let's make Sin and Punishment for Wii, and started bugging these two about it. Nakagawa Suzuki, not in agreement. Iwata, Laughs. Magara, we thought we could use the Wii remote S pointer to aim and the nunkick to move. That S it, and that S what got us started. Iwata, wait, not so fast. Before we get into the Wii version, I want to hear about the original game. Laughs. Oh, right, laughs. Iwata, about when did development of the N64 version begin? Magawa. It went on sale in 2000. So? The setting for the original game was 2007, viewed as the near future, and the story was supposed to occur 10 years in the future. So we probably submitted the proposal around 1997. Iwata, the near future. 2007 has already passed. Laughs. Magawa, yeah, laughs. Iwata. For a game that was developed back then, Sin and Punishment took a relatively long time. And it went on sale during the last days of the N64. It was like you just barely caught the last train. Laughs. Magawa, sorry. Laughs. Iwata. Not at all. To tell the truth, I ran into some trouble in the days of the N64 myself. Back then, I was president of Hell Laboratory, Incorporated. The Nintendo 64 came out in 1996, but until 1999 and the release of Smash Bros. 6 and Pokémon Snap 7, Hell Laboratory W8SN able to contribute much in the way of new products. That was because the Nintendo 64 drastically changed how things were made up through the Super NES. We ran up against how to make the best use of 3D graphics, and the team had quite a hard time. About that time, in 1997, you wrote the proposal for Sin and Punishment, and the game came out in 2000. Could you tell me a little about the process of trial and error you went through at Treasure? During that period, 6 Super Smash Bros., a fighting game released for the Nintendo 64 in Europe in November 1999.7 Pokémon Snap, a camera adventure game released for the Nintendo 64 in Europe in September 2000. Magawa, maybe it would be best for our programmer Nakagawa to talk about that? Nakagawa, okay, as Iwata's just mentioned, how video games are made changed drastically with the Nintendo 64. Iwata, they sure did. It was a huge change. Nakagawa, but before the Nintendo 64, there had been some systems by other companies that would like 3D graphics interlevel consoles, so when it came to 3D, no wow. Iwata, you already had some. Nakagawa, yes, I was certain I could make it work for the Nintendo 64, but the Nintendo 64 was? It was really something. Laughs. Riley. Iwata. Laughs. If you didn't do it well, it WOULDN? Work at all. Nakagawa, right? That's exactly it. It just WOULDN? Work? Magawa, I was a main programmer at the time, so I really understand what he went through. Nakagawa, before the Nintendo 64, there were only interlevel consoles in terms of 3D capabilities, right? Iwata, yes, Nakagawa, but the Nintendo 64 was truly a 3D machine. Iwata, that's because we adopted the architecture from Silicon Graphics, Incorporated. Nintendo 64 had a number of restrictions, but it truly was a full-blown 3D machine. Nonetheless, the limits it had were such that, unless you used it right, it WOULDN? Run well. Silicon Graphics, Incorporated, an American company that was at the forefront of 3D graphics processing technology, established in 1982. Nakagawa, been enjoying working on the interlevel machines, but when I suddenly got my hands on a machine for real pros, for about a year it just WOULDN? Work? Iwata, who Nakagawa silently stares into the distance. Iwata, it WOULDN? Work? Nakagawa, sigh. Long sigh. Iwata laughs. That sigh was laden with meaning. Laughs. Nakagawa nods exaggeratedly. Iwata laughs.
Oh, N64. You will be missed. Looks like not a lot of people talk about controls, but at least we got our shmups, right? People talk about Downwell. Quit making fun of robots. They are not yours to make fun of. Timeline. Then we can always do topic mechanics. What the? You're purple. What are you doing in the topic of mechanics? How dare you? I don't know how that happened. Let me take a look at this one. 10, 12? I just forgot a comma there. Something like this. So this website has a lot of stuff on Shmups. Hero Core has some cool stuff in it about how to do rapid fire buttons. I remember in particular the way it did its rapid fire button is really cool, and I think Star Fox Zero does something similar. And I wish Metroid Prime Hunters for DS did something like this, but yeah, people just don't want to mash buttons all day. This gets really tiring. Can you see this? Mashing buttons, mashing the fire button. So now they have it to where you can just press it once and get like a flurry of bullets, and it just kind of makes it easier to do over long periods of time. Then we have Bangayo. Bangayo has some unique controls too. It's also a treasure game. I don't know how many people are talking about this. So let's look at the timeline. There's so many different ways to make interesting controls. I mean, you can mess with like the physical controller. You can mess with all kinds of like different controller like buttons and sticks and switches and things. You can make it to where I mean, usually that's when you start talking about like, well, what makes this game interesting, and you start putting interesting things into your mechanics and how they interact and what you do. But I think just controlling things alone, you can make it to where your controls allow you to do very cinematic things, very stylish things, and that sometimes has a little to do with how the game plays, right? So when you do camera controls, like what is the camera, how does it frame the action, and what does it let you do? How does it make you? How does it give you camera control so that you can make the action look one way or another, right? And there are very few games that have players that are so good that they can not only play the game well but make it look cool at the same time. Especially when the camera controls are independent of the player controls, right? But Mario 64 had a pretty cool camera setup. I think it's one of the only games ever that has a lock camera system where you can just lock the camera. Ooh, tell me about it, Yokoma, about what Metal Black does with its rapid fire. But as I finish up, with Mario 64, you can just hold the button, lock the camera, and then go all the way into the entire level and just leave the camera in one fixed place, which is really interesting. You can lock it all kinds of ways, and then just see how much you've memorized the level, which is fun. But then when you unlock it, the camera zooms into where you are, and you can lock it again. So you can just do like zoom, 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 like that. It's really cool. And yeah, like I said before, Wind Waker lets you spin the camera around like an idiot. When you're locked on, you can make it look cinematic, or you can just make everyone dizzy. The rapid fire slows when you hold it. That's interesting. Can you find me a video of that? If you can find me a video of that, you win the Twitch chat game for today. And if anyone in the chat can either think of a shmup to talk about or controls in some of their favorite shoot 'em up shooter style games, we'll even extend it to shooters. We'll talk about that. And in the meantime, I can take a clip at Downwell and see what we got. Or Hero Core, not Downwell. Downwell's cool. Yay, controls. Look, I talk about controls. Guess what I labeled the section as? Controls. Look how many few people talk about controls. That's weird. In this game, you have one button for firing left and one button for firing right. So you can move and shoot independently with the WASD or whatever. Or you control with the arrow keys, I believe, and then Z and X fire left and right. And then this game has a rapid fire toggle. So you can toggle it on and off if you just want to tap the buttons to rapid fire, or if you want to hold and that be rapid fire. And then it also has a charge mechanic where you have a close range blade attack. See this blade here? This little scoopy scoop? And then these are your bullets, right? So like so many shmups have charge and release, because if you don't have something like that, it's just like hold the fire button from the beginning to the end. Like I always look for in shooter games, what design elements encourage the player to not be constantly pressing the fire button. Wow, Yokoma, you need to give me videos of all these things happening right now, and I will put it into the database. Flip Hero, the player character, is designed with a balanced attack ranges, movement speed, and functional blind spots. You can only shoot left or right, and the blade is a close range attack, but you have to move a lot to hit targets, just like in Mega Man. Any target within the functional blind box is a threat, so anything that comes at you diagonally is hard to deal with, even the slight diagonal right here. And then you got this cool map. You got level, world design, you got progression, sequence breaking, speed running, you got all these cool things to think about. That's a really cool game. Bangayo? Oop, stop moving. Let's see if I talk about controls. Tight controls. In transition to the DS, the developers gave up the analog stick for the D-pad. Due to the hardware change, the movement and shooting controls are quantified to 8 directions. Though the change may feel old school, unfortunately, the level design made the necessary adjustments to achieve effective tight controls. Every element in the game is quantified according to a bit unit. By building according to this unit of measurement, everything in the game fits into a sharp coordinate plane. The visual presentation that results from the quantified creates levels that clearly communicate their physical and spatial boundaries. At a mere glance, you know if you can move through gaps and how. Furthermore, to help players shoot at the angles in between the 8 directions, by holding the fire button, players can utilize some auto aim. Oh yeah. That was cool. See, this is worth talking about. I wish I had video. You gotta give me links. I'm not gonna take your word for it, Yokoma. Because one great way to promote your channel is to spread those links around via design oriented. That's right. One other thing that Bangayo has is you can freely fly around in all 8 directions, but if you let go of the hover button or the jet propulsions, you just drop due to gravity. So when you drop, you curve, just like Mario, but when you fly around, they're jerky 8-way movement. And combining both of them, where the level design is really blocky and jerky, but your movement through it can either be jerky or smooth, and the missiles coming in at you are smooth, like, I just thought it was really cool. Just like in the original Mario Brothers. I think it's cool. Downwell, look at all these colors. This guy just talked about Downwell. That's because Downwell is really cool. Let's talk about shooters and see what we get. Sunset Overdrive. We get some of these zipline thingies in Zone of the Enders and Super Hot, but those are like first-person shooters and third-person shooters. Oh, so here's one thing we can watch, look at. So let's type in Splatoon, Splatoon, and then we can type in Control. Let's see if we can get it. Analog versus gyro controls. Check that out. This is a good video.
Hey Squids! Today we're going to talk about a highly debated topic amongst Squidsters. Analog versus motion controls. You may remember a time from Squid Kids past during our humble beginnings using analog and being quite oblivious to the apparent preferable control scheme, the gyro. We can all have a laugh about that, and in time we Squid Kids all went on the path to learning gyro controls. Motion controls master race. But as we have tried to explain in the past, analog isn't as bad as most seem to think. The Japanese team Memories, specifically Yugo, has shined some light on just how viable the use of analog can be in Splatoon. As I mentioned, all of Squid Kids started off as analog players, something you guys wouldn't let go in the comments section of each video. Analog is very intuitive, and it comes naturally to many gamers, especially for those with varying experience from past shooters. But unlike those other console shooters, the responsiveness of the analog isn't as good on the gamepad as it is on other consoles, like the Xbox One, where playing Gears of War with analog, for example, is actually possible. Jumping can be a strain on aim, especially for those who play analog, which is why shooting at someone jumping may be difficult. Yet, it can be even worse when attempting to jump and shoot yourself. With the lack of customization in controls, one method to deal with jump shooters is to either swim away and wait for their landing, or use the claw method, which is using your thumb to press X while the index finger navigates the analog. Analog may have some disadvantages, but no one can deny the comfort of playing and resting back on your seat while poning noobs, something you can't necessarily do with motion controls, since you must be seated in a vigilant position. So what about gyro controls? The gyroscope within the gamepad allows you to use motion controls as a method to aim, and it also controls the camera. It allows for superior aim since you can seamlessly adjust the gamepad towards a target as opposed to micromanaging your aim with analog, something that is analogous to PC gamers, stating that mouse and keyboard is superior to console controllers for the same reason. You can also quickly look at your flanks to see if there are enemies approaching in a fluid motion and then continue to focus your aim directly in front of you. That SRB2 dude explained in his demonstration of motion controls that it's possible to do hard turns, something that is very difficult to pull off with analog controls unless you play with the highest sensitivity. It was for this reason that we made our first video called Y Positioning to deal with this issue when using analog. Jump shots are also extremely easy to pull off with the gyro since it can be aimed down while your thumb is free to press X. Additionally, it is easier to hit jumping opponents since you can follow their trajectory. Motion controls also make strafing much easier to perform, quickly going left and right while maintaining aim on an opponent, which is yet another difficult task to do with analog controls. But motion controls has quite a steep learning curve due to its unintuitive nature. The camera panning as you move and aim is difficult to grasp, making it a frustrating task. You can also get jammed using motion controls when in a firefight as you move your arms around to aim on an opponent, putting yourself in an awkward position. One suggestion for this issue is to use your hands for steady control of the gyro, as opposed to using your whole upper body in turning the camera. Once the learning curve is conquered, the fluid movement gives you the full experience of Splatoon. But there is one important distinction between the two methods of control: steady aim. Although motion controls allows you a quick ability to lock down on an opponent, sometimes a player may lack a steady aim for the quickest splat. Conversely, using analog to lock down on an opponent may be frustrating, but once the reticle is on the inkling, it is as steady as it could be. When it comes to movement, some may argue that motion controls may have the edge in this category with the ease provided by the gyroscope. You can quickly splash ink on any turf you're about to land on and not compromise your aim on incoming inklings. Although, in some cases, it may actually hinder movement and creativity. I find that I'm spending more time trying to steady my aim and make smoother turns than actually swimming and making creative approaches. But that could be remedied with practice. In my experience, making the transition to gyro controls improved my play overall. In the end, many will argue, including us, that motion controls is superior to analog. But there are many players out there playing at a high competitive level using analog. Mullen, a Scope player, and Mario, a Dynamo player from Determination, formerly known as Squid Squad clubs, use analog. All members of the Squid Box use analog, and they use all sorts of weapons, including aim-heavy weapons like the custom dual squelcher. All of Paradise, formerly Squid Squad Spades, use motion controls, while their overseas rivals, Memories, use a combination of both. So really, in the end, preference is the most important of all. If you're comfortable with analog and you don't think it hinders your aim, then your preference can carry you far, maybe even as far as the Squid Box winning a stacked tournament with analog. That's all for today, Squids. Let us know what controls you use and why you think it's best. Stay fresh!
One of the best videos you'll see actually had history of the tournaments they attended and the winners and what controls they use and actual field tests. But hey, if only we could be so well researched. Cool. I already played Star Fox earlier today, so I do not necessarily want to boot that back up, but that's mainly our entire look at controls and shooter design based on what's out there so far. It's not a lot out there. I mean, most shoot 'em ups have pretty simple controls, really. So, and there aren't a lot of 3D shoot 'em ups. Not that I know of. And 3D is when things get tricky in terms of controls. So, like, if you're gonna make a 2D game, congratulations. Up, down, left, right. Moves up, down, left, right. It's not too hard. Ooh, hardware. Cool. I'm going to resume my working on my witness essay. Hey, check this out. Controls. I got all my notes. 13 pages of notes. I gotta figure out how to turn it into not 13 pages of notes. And I'll be doing that for the next hour or so. But if you guys want to hang out, I'm going to stop the stream and then start it back up so that we have a nice clean break. But thanks for joining us. Tomorrow we'll talk more about Star Fox Zero. I want to talk a little bit about how space is defined in the game. So, like, especially compared to 64 and other shooters. I have Star Fox 64 on my N64, but we may just look at videos because I don't know if I want to connect all that to my capture card. We'll see if we can get it to work. There's Space Harrier and Sin and Punishment. Where? Where? Ooh, Kid Icarus Uprising and the rail missions. Those are 2D, but they're also, well, the flying is automatic, so you're just moving around in 2D, but you're flying through a 3D environment, just like Star Fox 64 before all range mode. Somebody said the magic word, so we're gonna have to look at Kid Icarus. What can we find? We need like a video of it. Let's do this one. This one seems interesting.
Hey everybody, it's Chugga Conroy. Welcome back to more Kid Icarus Uprising. In the last episode, we were at the Thundercloud Temple.
Yep.
Salty, wonderful. So as we're moving out here, I just want to recap the doors that we've seen. You know what I mean? The door that Pit goes through.
I will go soaring through the sky.
World.
This is my favorite
In
song.
Chapter 13, you had this.
Again today, I will go soaring through the sky.
Okay, so you had Pit's awesome singing. Awesome. Let's move out.
Oh, I'm so sleepy.
What the hell was that, Pit? Your ability to go through doors sure has gone downhill since the early days.
We have a big problem, bigger than all of us gods.
Huh? What is that? It's ransacking the earth.
Enemies incoming!
They're firing on me.
I'm not even sure what they are. They're organized, but who's giving the orders?
Maybe they're a new unit of the forces of nature?
Come on now, do they look natural to you?
Morning, do-gooders!
Don't tell me you two are behind this.
Sadly, no. Though I do applaud any and all violence directed at you.
Plus, you should know that I'd never work with Hades. In fact, I was about to destroy him when they suddenly appeared.
No, they saved her at the last minute.
So you have no idea what they are.
I'm sure know-it-all Palutena is just dying to illuminate us.
Unfortunately, I
Aiming
don't
is
know
so
any
good
more
in
than
this,
you do.
though.
I can only tell you that they're not of this world.
You mean they're invaders from space?
They're not just invading. This swarm is harvesting whole sections of the Earth. They're like bees taking pollen back to whatever hive they call home.
See, if this was Star Fox Zero, you'd be in control of a lot of this, which is kind of crazy.
But whatever they are, they must be stopped. Earth is my flower to plunder, not theirs.
The wonderful charge mechanics.
Forces of nature, drop the hammer.
I guess we underworlders will get in the mix too.
Yeah, this game doesn't have a lock-on though. That's interesting, but bullets in general have homing. So Star Fox 64, you only get homing if you lock on
Music
and
is no
charge.
slouch, I'll say that much. With Palutena's army, the forces of nature, and the Underworld army all working together against this new threat. How could this get any more awesome? Just you wait.
Villains are no match, but pyro.
And you have your supers, which you earn.
Pyro blasters, space weirdos. Kablooey, kablooey!
Yes, let's let Pyron take care of this. We'll take the other side of the island.
Good plan.
Good plan indeed. Do I even need a sing?
Islands is just one of
Yep.
them.
Just one of their bases. How much more hell do they plan to raise?
Let me drop a little knowledge on you.
Oh, goody.
It's all in the Book of Divine Prophecy, Chapter 84, Section 3. Beckoned by destruction and
Yeah, so you can see these flying missions are highly cinematic. They can do a lot with their enemy patterns and their bullet patterns, and because you can aim so well on the 3DS, you can shoot just about everywhere you want. There's lots of control there. When you're flying, you can go left, right. You can do a quick dash in midair. You can also reflect
You
bullets.
can trust this guy, right?
So like you got a lot of control defensively and offensively. And then you have your supers, which you earn.
Pyro blasters, space weirdos. Kablooey, kablooey!
Yes, let's let Pyron take care of this. We'll take the other side of the island.
Good plan.
Good plan indeed. Do I even need to say anything more about that guy? Come on. I just want to say he is voiced by a certain someone who has voiced another character that we have actually met before. I'll be going over this at a later time, but please don't spoil it if you don't already know. You will never guess it. That is pure amazing
This is out of
talent.
control.
The armor blowing up the Earth and then taking the
Yeah, this is
pieces
crazy.
themselves.
If they're like bees, what
They
are
went
they doing?
inside of the alien ship that's mining the Earth.
Hades who lured the Arum to our world.
What? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well, Pyron said they're beckoned by destruction and corruption. They were likely drawn here by the war between the underworld and nature.
Convenient how you've forgotten your little tiff with the Underworld.
Convenient how you've forgotten a massive recent bomb visible from space.
You, Zibbit, the arm are the aggressors, and we're the victims.
You're absolutely right. Like it or not, we're on the same side now. We're heading to the center of the Arum Islands. That tower is the key to stopping all this devastation. Prepare for landfall.
Yeah, you get a. I think you get a bonus boost for destroying all the enemies in a set in this game. In Star Fox, you don't get a bonus boost for
With
doing that, but
the
you
battle
do
between the Underworld
get an
army, the
opportunity
forces
to
of
get
nature,
extra
and
hits
Palutena no longer
whenever
matter.
you blow up multiple enemies simultaneously. And Star Fox Zero has a thing where when enemies are falling through the sky, if you shoot them while they're burning, you get extra hits. So like
Get our
lots
food,
of.
move onward.
I mean, we're gonna talk about systems and combo systems and
The Arum must have
stuff like
stolen
that, I
materials
think, on
from
Thursday.
all over to build this place.
maybe went Thursday or Friday, but like yeah, like these games are really
Being
cool.
patched together, everything seems pretty
This
structured.
game is so
If
good.
the Arum are like bees, that's no surprise. Bees are orderly colonies. Likewise, the Arum seem to act as one, and I doubt these drones have any sense of free will.
There's all
It's
this
crazy. So
activity
like
here
this
with
is
no
basically a
actual
3D action game,
life. Pretty creepy.
like a
At
shooter
this
and
point, I expect the boss or something.
somewhat of
They
a
need to,
brawler,
like,
but you don't have any lock on.
I've been waiting for
Like
you.
your view, your aiming is just so good
Are you
that you don't need extra lock on. You don't need
calling one of my commanders to keep
lock on specific controls.
I was just kidding. I'm fine.
Don't lie, Pit. You totally want her to bring over Phosphor to keep you company.
Cool. That's one of my favorite games of all time. Yeah, the Space Harrier moments where you can run on the stage, they're so rare, but they're so cool. They do absolutely nothing, and yet they're so cool. Yeah, so I'm gonna you know, switch, stop the stream, then restart it, and just talk about the witness. Here we go. Thanks for joining us.